A história do nosso planeta está sendo escrita todos os dias. Só que ela está ficando quente demais. O aquecimento global é um fato. Mas também é um fato que estamos escrevendo essa história. E ela pode ser diferente. A JBS, uma das maiores produtoras de alimentos do mundo, apresentou um compromisso global. JBS Net Zero. Até 2040, ano após ano, ela vai melhorar ainda mais o jeito que produz, com 100% de energia limpa e mais eficiência. Hoje, a JBS já exige desmatamento ilegal zero e monitora todos os seus fornecedores. Até quem vende para eles começou a ser monitorado também. E vai ter muito investimento em ciência para criar novas tecnologias. Não vai ser fácil, mas será feito. Para tudo isso sair do papel. JBS Net Zero 2040. Alimentar a mudança é o nosso compromisso. A história do nosso planeta está sendo escrita todos os dias. Só que ela está ficando quente demais. O aquecimento global é um fato. Mas também é um fato que estamos escrevendo essa história. E ela pode ser diferente. A JBS, uma das maiores produtoras de alimentos do mundo, apresentou um compromisso global. JBS Net Zero. Até 2040, ano após ano, ela vai melhorar ainda mais o jeito que produz, com 100% de energia limpa e mais eficiência. Hoje, a JBS já exige desmatamento ilegal zero e monitora todos os seus fornecedores. Até quem vende para eles começou a ser monitorado também. E vai ter muito investimento em ciência para criar novas tecnologias. Não vai ser fácil, mas será feito. Para tudo isso sair do papel. JBS Net Zero 2040. Alimentar a mudança é o nosso compromisso.
Boa tarde mais uma vez.
Good afternoon once again. We are here back to have the panel Call to Action, Producing Conserving is Possible. And will join us in this panel Denise Hills, Global Director of Sustainability, Natura & Co. Gilberto Tomazoni, Global CEO, JBS, and Mr. Fernando Sampaio, Executive Director, Strategy to Produce, Conserve and Include, State of Mato Grosso, Much Moderate. So I'll have the journalist contributor from Valor Econômico, São Paulo, Andrea Viali. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a good pleasure to be here. in this edition, Sustainable CBDS. Our topic today is very important because Brazil can conserve and produce at the same time, and the economy can have this decarbonization and with the clear targets and to signal changes, and Brazil being the protagonist of these changes to preserve nature. We know that produce and conserve cannot be antagonists. We can have business solutions that will offer added value and traceability of products, including the Amazon rainforest, where big companies operate. With actions in all these topics, CBDS has active commitments, such as the business commitment for Brazil in terms of biodiversity, the Brazilian for action for water resources and sustainability for food systems in Brazil, and the business position for the climate with big repercussion and the protagonism and the conference about the conference in Glasgow in November. And have the communication from the Brazilian sector for the legislation, judiciary and executive, where companies have manifested this negative perception of Brazil in terms of the Amazon rainforest. By saying that, we can offer our panel and our participants, Gilberto Tomazoni, JBS CEO Global, Denise Hills from Natura & Co., and Fernando Sampaio, Executive Director of Strategy Producing, Preserving, and Including the State of Mato Grosso. Having in mind that our dynamic is here, will be a talk show, a chat, a live chat with some important issues for us to discuss. I'd like to offer the floor to Gilberto. Gilberto, can we talk about that? Let's go. We know that JBS has signed the positioning of the business sector for sustainability in terms of the food systems in Brazil. This initiative for CBDS was developed in a very important vision for United Nations this year. One of the priority decisions we have is for traceability, for sustainable growth, and for the production system of the meat. JBS has a time target. Do you have a time target to have 100% of your chain to be traceable? And I'd like to comment for you to comment the principal lessons learned and the challenges in this venture.
Microfone. Gilberto, seu microfone, por favor, está no mudo.
Desculpa.
Imagina.
Eu estava falando, sim, primeiro, boa tarde a todos.
First of all, I'd like to say good afternoon, everyone. It's a big pleasure to be here. These discussions are important in terms of the transition for a low carbon economy that are vital for the company, society, and the country. And this issue in terms of responsibility for the value chain, there's no question about it. Each company must control their own value chain. And for us in JBS, we have a policy to be responsible in terms of social, environment, and zero tolerance for deforestation, and also for greenhouse gas effect. And our policies include in indigenous zones, devastation, if it is controlled by the IBAMA environmental agency, and we control 100% of our suppliers with this spatial control with satellites, with a specific company for that. And this is very important because we have a policy that we have to monitor this policy. So we have hired grantor that audits this process of monitoring that we have. And this year we have contracted KPMG to assess this full cover of our process. Is fundamental, it's vital, this issue of having and all this system monitored. Today you have 60,000 suppliers, and 11,000 are totally blocked. It's not a virtue. I didn't want to have anyone blocked, but the big issue, the big challenge we have in the sector is that we monitor our suppliers, our direct suppliers, because in this sector is not integrated. And by saying so, if you control your direct supplier, it's not enough. You must control the supplier for your supplier, because they have actions between them that when you just control the direct ones, you cannot see that. So the data for our transactions, they are not public. Right now, with technology and blockchain, we can develop a green platform, and we can and will monitor until 2025 100% of our suppliers, direct and indirect suppliers, in all green systems. The big challenge here is that the data are not public, and then the adoption of the system is volunteer. So you must stimulate so that this supplier will be part of our system, so that we can monitor that. We have installed 13 green offices to help those out of compliance, and then they can be complying with all these external suppliers, and they can join the system, because we don't want to block them, but all of them must be in compliance. Sometimes it's not possible to be in compliance because it lacks knowledge or some other information, so that we can have that. So we are supporting and stimulating this, and it's so vital that we are sharing and are opening our platform in operational point. We are sharing all the sector, not only with the direct sectors, but also the financial system based on social and environment information. And by 2025, 100% of our direct and indirect suppliers will be monitored. I found it so important the way you put it, because it's not about banning. You must have a compliance to bring these producers which are not legalized to come back to the game. So I'd like to ask Denise. She is in Natura with a very large expertise. She is one of the first names inside this sector for this business model, bringing results in both aspects according to what was expected. I'd like to ask you what everyone wants to know. What Natura has not achieved yet and can be taught to companies that are focusing on sustainability and trying to join this game right now? Thank you so much for your question. And I would like to say good afternoon, everyone. I think I will start by saying what Gilberto finished. For over 20 years, we have been in the Amazon rainforest, and this participation started with the Congress of ECO 92, one of the most important points. It's very much connected with the Amazon rainforest. And then in this period, Natura has learned a great deal. The first one I would like to say, saying what Gilberto has said in terms of collaboration, one of the biggest lessons we have learned is that this development is made in a group. Be this to develop this diversity in the Amazon rainforest with strengthening of productive chains in the region. So added values, added chains as well as we could develop, and then we can learn that it's possible to create a model that's different from the traditional one that talks with these chains, these producers and traditional communities. And more, we must offer a model that can have resources so that it can be ready for production, can discover and work with traditional activities. And then they are a source of conservation and preservation, and much of what is used in our products. You can see some trees that were extinct. So nowadays, it's one of the most iconic products, and it's very important for Natura. And aligning innovation, technology, and knowledge, what is traditional, could bring another butter that's very rich in moisturizing, one of the biggest moisturizers that is the only one in the Amazon rainforest, and made this endemic species in Amazon could be restored. You're talking about creating value for this community, to create a business model, to create a new way of producing, and at the same time preserving and not degenerating, instead of putting trees down for 10 reais to create broomsticks. So this part for communities where we have the supply and payment for benefits in terms of traditional knowledge and the handling of this foresting, we can bring more revenue for the communities, and a model of sustainable development that has challenges of economic sector, valuing the characteristics and vocation of a system such as the Amazon rainforest in terms of social and environmental impact. The systemic vision we can have, and we know that this lesson learned brings more and more a necessity and importance in terms of the regulation, the creation of the public policies as a whole for the preservation of the forest, and it's a big ally for all of our strategies, just like Gilberto said in the topic of his speech, in his remark. And more we must talk about an economy that will bring balance to our carbon emissions, and then it can be some sort of regeneration. So net zero, as we have been talking about, but it also values systems that are essential to life. So few people know, few people maybe understand that if you keep living and producing natural ecosystems, will offer origin to life, the water, the air we breathe, and all this balance that makes life on Earth, our economy must produce. So these are two lessons learned. First, we have to share what we have learned, and Natura makes all the information public with the traceability of our systems. So social P&L, environmental P&L are very important, not only the methodology, but also the social impact in the communities of the Amazon rainforest. They are public to show that it's possible to do it. And at the same time, more and more we are going to operate and say that Natura and Co. is the power of collaboration, because frequently none of us must start from scratch, and the way Natura started long ago in the beginning of this conversation. I think we have good examples to share in terms of circular carbon. That's a result of a more integrated system, new source of revenue and income to keep the carbon, the structures, business, and creation of a chain of value that's unique and has a total positive impact. And it must be possible with several producers, local producers that are in the region, and that guarantee Natura in this network the capacity of operating and implementing what we like to say. It's only a positive impact and innovation when this innovation generates impact in a new model to have a feasible impact in terms of economic, social, and environmental in the same proportion. This is our view that we have. The biggest challenge, Amazon rainforest is not the only one. It is very diverse. So you must know it profoundly to understand the dynamics of the region, to work collectively in partnership with the public and private sector, to offer our capacity to generate more engagement in this business, sharing knowledge and bringing new models to have this articulation in this collective work, specifically in this region, is essential. What we have yet to do beyond and besides net zero, and to increase our participation preservation of the Amazon, which is 2 million hectares of preserved areas directly and indirectly. So we have to work more and more so that we can have the public commitment to end deforestation, to have a participation with other companies. The new vision of the group is to offer the best efforts for net zero until 2025. And we have been working together with Info Amazônia and several other partnerships and portals that monitor deforestation in Amazon and help us engage in initiatives of knowledge with so many other partners. We have been working together, and to work with articulation with JBS, Global Pact, System B, several partnerships that's possible, because working individually actually is very little effective and generate a small scale. Collective learning will make us much more efficient to use the services in a network, and it could include many more people, much more technology, and much more innovation to offer space for sustainable development. That's a model that's more suitable without a competition between development models and between results and high impact in terms of the social part.
Well, thank you very much for what you have said about adding value to the basin. I have written an article showing what happens in Pará a couple of years ago, and it was easy to see how you have added lots of things to the community, also stopping the cutting of the forests. And it's a very good example. You talked about territories, how to be sustainable in these territories. And I'd like to invite Fernando Sampaio. He's a member of this board in the state of Mato Grosso, executive director of a strategy to produce. So how does the public and private sector can join efforts to work in these productive areas of the country? What are the challenges to implement bottlenecks, to finance, and to have a larger experience of sustainability? I think we would like to hear you. Well, when we talk about territorial sustainability, we are no longer looking for a productive chain, for example, soybeans or livestock. We are looking at it in a larger scale. Mato Grosso decided to do that in 2015. The first step was to invite the stakeholders that are interested in this territory and look into Mato Grosso and try to think, where do we want to be in the next 10, 15 years? We're guided by a set of targets to conserve, preserve, and include people. So how to find a balance in our state? We can produce more to serve the internal demand and also external market. We can preserve what we should preserve. More than 46% it's possible to be preserved. And also we can have a social productive inclusion from the traditional communities and indigenous people as well. When we define where we want to go, my question is how? How can we do that? What will the government and what will the private sector do? Only the government can do certain things. Well, since it was launched, Mato Grosso has invested in fighting the deforestation now with the new Governor Mauro Mendes. We're doing that. There are lots of investment in the Environmental Secretariat. We have now a red flag alert in which we allocated capital for many years to have a surveillance process there. We are doing that this year, and the outcome is very good. We have been fighting deforestation, and the outcome is very good. Also, regulation of the processes there. We have a task force to do that. We're working together. Also, the issue of property together with INCRA, Brazilian development of these lands. We have built a policy for family agriculture. Then we have to work with the private sector. There is a range of initiatives, different manners on how this sector can support a territory as ours. When Tomazoni says that there is a commitment with productive chain, or JBS invest and support the producer with technical support, there are some green offices here. They can look for regulation as well. It helps that the state move forward to regulate and diminish the deforestation. When, for example, Natura buys nuts oil from a different state, it is somehow supporting a network of people to do that, and there is an inclusion contributing for the preservation of the forest. These are two examples of what we're talking in this panel, but I align our strategy of sustainability of these companies with the strategy of sustainability of the state, and they, get stronger together. When we work like that, we decrease the social and environmental problems that we may have for soybeans or livestock. When we regulate these factors, we are able then to have greater public and private partnership, placing everybody or looking into the same thing. We're going to help Mato Grosso to achieve this balance. We have a challenge because we are a very big territory, the size of Germany or France. We still have lots of things to do, but it's necessary to have money. We have to restore the fields, the areas. It's necessary to have more investment for our state. And then we are working now. A study is going to be presented in the COP in Glasgow. We want to know how much money we need to advance with these targets, what kind of money we need, what is the budget from the state of Mato Grosso, what is a private, public, what is the rural credit or loans, how can we reach this impact that is so much desired, or less impact actually, how we can bring more investment for the state. Today, we have international cooperation with a Dutch company that finance projects in the field. Germany, United Kingdom is helping us to reduce the red emissions. All of that has been used to control the deforestation, but also supporting family agriculture, indigenous people. And World Bank supports our state as well, the cooperation with Germany and private funds, many funds that are doing business with us, very impactful business. And so they demand environmental return. And when we talk then about environmental issues, when we look into these territories, we are talking about on how we can design this ecosystem, both public and private, in investments, so we can move forward. And the potential is immense. We, as I told you, 60% of our territory is preserved. Our estimate is that in the next 10 years to come, Brazil has grains. We're going to increase in 10 hectares, but we have 14 million of pastures that can become areas for agriculture, intensify livestock, we can produce more meat, all of that is possible. So soy demand in Brazil fits inside the space of Mato Grosso. We are able then to advance with this proposal. This panel is called Call to Action, and we are inviting private partners, investors, to join efforts with our government so we are able to advance, to progress in the sustainability. We produce lots of commodities, but there are many other opportunities related to inclusion, to this chain of diversity or biodiversity and economy. We have this shared vision on where we want to go. We have partnership more and more with other stakeholders, and we have this model that can be replicated in any other area that produces commodities or whatever. Great, fantastic that you have talked about the opportunities coming from this low carb factor. We're gonna be very close to this COP in Glasgow. We are packing to share our experiences. CBET has lots of actions in this direction. We place ourselves having this mindset, this ambition to be more active in this sector, talking about this zero carb strategies. I'd like to go back to you guys, to Gilberto, please, to talk about that. You are from JBS. Please let us know about the stages of this race. This is not simple, I know, but what are the main challenges, the main risks that we face for this call to action, and also the actions that have started to follow in this path? Well, great question. I think that sharing these experiences, this collaboration is key as well. I would like to put that into context, if you don't mind. Well, how do we view that? Denise said about this problem in the future is not there, it's now. We have to work with the effects of that. The way that we produce, it's not sustainable, and the population will increase as well. We're gonna have 10 billion people in 2050. We need 60% more protein. So what can we do? We have to look in our country. We are a producer, have to think about the consumer. We should have a very ambitious target. That's why we have this 2040 target, to have a net carbon. The greatest challenge that we face come from these questions, because 90% of our emission of our value chain is in there. I think it's a direct. We can be the inducer of that, of this process, working with everybody, with the vendors, suppliers, so everybody can work together in this direction. That's our way out. We talk a lot about targets, goals, but transparency is fundamental as well. We have to separate what is just talk because it's a wave, it's a hype, SBT, we are going to unfold the goals with that. We adhered to the only targets. The methodology, we are in 19 countries. Not all the time they're the same. So how we can put it all together? We have hired a company that that is going to help us. Well, what is our program? We are going to reduce net zero 2040, but we're going to reduce 30% of emissions compared to 19. And we're going to invest. We're already investing for the next 10 years to come $1 billion in this process to help transform our processes, our footprint of low carb. Every operation in the world will be 100% of renewable sources, coming from renewable sources. I don't have answers for everything. We are going to invest $100 million up to 2030 in R&D, solutions, mitigations, emissions, and carbon sequestration of the soil. We don't have all answers right now, but using technology, the science will answer that. The opportunity that we have is this transition of low carb, very impactful, in my opinion, as big as the Industrial Revolution. We're going to connect to other goals to be worth doing so. It must be part of our culture. If we decide that sustainability for JBS is not only part of a sector, it's the company's strategy. We connect both things. Every decision we make have to take into consideration the environmental impact. So, how can we have an umbrella in which we make the decisions? That's how we look into the world, not to be in this rhetoric, to say what we're doing, what we're not doing. I'm going to talk about Brazil, for example. Let's talk about the mindset. As Denise said, every investment that we're making will increase the company's competitiveness. In addition to think about the population, because we observe that every investment that we're doing in innovation, technology, reducing the greenhouse effect, it's going to increase the competitiveness of the company, either to reduce the cost or to decrease the cost of the product. So we are really focusing on how you want to increase the productivity if you don't reduce the waste. So the natural resources will, yield more. When I focus on reducing the waste, the solid waste, up to 2030, we're going to produce 50% of the solid waste. An example that I will give you, we have an area of leather. We developed great innovation. We were awarded by that. We reduced 93% of residues of waste. It's real, it's feasible. We're going to reduce the liquid waste in 30%. Everything together will become a circular economy. Well, we have to reduce the waste, so we're using more the material, right? But what you're not able to reduce in this productive process, there is an industry that is going to be formed, which is the circular economy. We want to increase the productivity, then we're going to use these wastes. Either we have partnership with other companies that can use that product, or we are going to change this process. We are creating a company of biofertilizers together with Seabra. Next year in January, we're going to open this industrial residues. The other example, we are putting together peptides. We are going to open a factory with our industrial residues. And now in April, the factory is going to be working. Biodiesel, biofuel as well. We're going to open a company as well. So we are taking every residue and transforming. First, we reduce and then we transform them. And then talking about liquid residues, if we can reduce as much as we can, you have to treat it. We are designing a project that this liquid that generates methane, we are covering these areas, the fermentation of this process. We are going to have a methane sequestration, having 3 solutions. We can use burners. Using this methane, we are going to generate electricity. Having this partnership with a startup company, we are going to feed bacteria with methane, and these bacteria, they will become feed for the animal. These are just practical things. When you go to the level 2, you change. Well, we generate already at home 30% of our electricity by biomass. Our stores shift. We will be 100% with solar energy. Scope 3, also transforming the use of electricity. Fernando talked about solution based on nature. We do have solution. We believe in that, the same area that you can apply more modern practices, you can produce 40% more of food, taking an integration between production of livestock, agriculture, production of grains, and using part of the forest to plant new trees, intensifying the production of grains, and then you recover. Then you can go through the sequestration process. There are solutions. What we have to do is to scale it up. Brazil is the only country that can produce more in the world. As Fernando said, the points that you have brought up, you can leverage. We can bring the sectors to bring more visibility for this process. I talked about technology. We are investing in research, fermentation of the cattle, feeding them with grass. You can reduce in up to 30% of greenhouse effect. And then we also have a partnership with a foreign company and the Brasilia Institute to use natural additives for the feed of the cattle. So investing in technology, collaborating, we are going to form a beautiful ecosystem. Everybody is interconnected. Thank you.
Very interesting, Gilberto. You brought practical measures for this net zero in terms of the points our report has said. In terms of the United Nations climate changes, the next 10 years will be fundamental for us to reach this carbon road. Talking about these indicators, I'd like to invite Denise once again, because without mediation, there is no management. In this sense, how has Natura developed its business model in terms of environmental risks, climate changes, and companies nowadays have a big demand to declare what they have been doing? I would say that metrics are related into climate changes. In the past, it was something very difficult 10 years ago, but right now they must be faced with all the projects we have had. So how have you been working? The first one, metrics for management of all processes, the usage of our ingredients, because Natura has a commitment to have 100% of circularity of its products. So we're talking that until by 2030, we have 100% of our products, the packages, and also the ingredients. And they will come from recycling, especially the packaging, totally biodegradable or being reused. And then more and more, we have this impact that we all generate. We are creating impacts based on our existence for this carbon. It's a system for ecologic part where this awareness for impact management is analyzed for all the innovation cycle. According to these targets, we have the carbon compensation. We have had that since 2014. We have an environmental calculator where it supplies all the data for carbon emissions, generation of residues, and all other items that we have been implementing. And we are understanding how to do this product, which kind of package we are doing, which types, in terms of ingredient, the weight, the size. And then inside of this process of decision-making, in terms of the product and innovation of this product, we can consider this data based on the effectiveness we must have in terms of design, organic material, circularity, and all the cycle of innovation. More and more, it will prioritize these concepts of circularity where we will develop other forms. If we can guarantee that in this process, we have a total commitment with the management process, but we must have the data to guarantee that we can incorporate all these impacts, and then we can guarantee that all products in all the chain and the normal cycle in our routine, because sustainability, ESG, we have in the decision making in our daily activities. It's not in the final of the year report. This is very important. So it took us to think more and more how we can reposition or rethink products that will have not totally transparent plastic, but it's 100% recycled. So it's a good way to offer this transparent package so that it can be efficient and we can engage our customer to do that. So with this awareness, we will value what is really important and it will be essential to change processes. Another example I like to offer is that we have a multidisciplinary committee, so joined by several areas, with the design itself that has the commitment to identify the points and to have more technologies, new indicators, so that we can track this part and to become public our commitment with the Amazon rainforest, measuring our environmental impact, having our carbon calculator to get to net zero. So then we will have net zero 2030. 20 years before the agreement made by United Nations. This is our agreement from Natura. And then these initiatives will have a dialogue with a very important point to guarantee a sustainable development model. So we define the company and your factory, we think about a new portfolio of products. These commitments and to have these indicators in the process will guarantee that the monitoring will be constant. And I'll offer two examples. Recently, we have announced that since 2016, we have not only all of our environmental impacts, but also the methodology. That's the environmental profit law gross to have the environmental impact in the company P&L. Each dollar we offer in terms of the value of the products, we can measure the impacts we generate, and we can assess the consequences that we have in the final step of the product. When I compensate carbon, I can see that a benefit that will help us not only to have a better report, but to make better decisions in terms of the indicators we are going to prioritize. This is extremely important. The second point that we have talked about, we must use it in a collaborative way with participation of society, because the impact will not be restricted only to production and the distribution of the products. This accountability will see not only the direct impact, but also those who are in the step of consumption. So a big part of our carbon emissions, they come from when somebody turns on the shower because of the consumption and usage of energy to heat the water. That's the environmental impact that's called Scope 3. So to have these methodologies, to make them public and to consider all the steps is essential, not only to guarantee that, but also to make the best decisions about where we can invest, where we can align our strategies, much more than a report can talk about management. When you do that in terms of biodiversity, our model that is being carried out by families, small farmers, in the management of their daily activities, it's clearly a decision that you have more value in terms of environmental issues and benefits and value generation. It represents 6% of the positive impact in our chain. So it's about 6% of all the impact. If you get to know that in terms of social capital, environmental capital, human capital, they are more and more a target that you have developed methodologies and to have a metrics for that, to have several examples. In human capital, have the impact of the income that comes to families for supply. As a natural capital, it was valued for this 2 million of hectares for the Amazon rainforest. And as a complement, I can tell you that in the environmental impact in 2018, you have the SPNL, what is the social value that added to the profit or loss with wins and losses, and with Natura Consultants. And back in 2018, we had with all the supply communities. What is our community at the end of the day? So we had integrated profit and loss, which is one of the most sophisticated models in the ESG models, and they have monetary value with social, environmental, and natural impact with our products, and indirectly based on the activities of our company, but it can be used in any company. And for us, it's very important for the understanding of our impacts and for the integrated management of the environmental, social resources together with economic resources. The decision is not only to see if the company is feasible, if the product is feasible, and then we see the environmental impact. No, we are in the decade of the action. We must offer legacy. It cannot have only this. What is the positive contribution? What's the legacy that we can have more and more positive production to minimize effects of negative impacts and to work in a more innovative way and to create business models that can be regenerating. It helps us to guide our business in the result of the first P&L of the positive impact, human and social capital, and natural capital that's reduced by the program in Amazon. When we have the reverse system, what is equivalent in plastic that you left in the chain, and also the compensation for carbon that you have been doing. And also it helps us to know what carbon we have in terms of the footprints and the way we can make decisions and to formulate the business and the company to invest, whether it is in renewable energies or products that are more efficient, that carry less water, less energy, they are more concentrated, they have more recycled plastic, green plastic, organic alcohol to reduce our impact to zero, but the objective is to create negotiations business that's ultra two. So for each objective, we have two in terms of impact. So we will solve problems in society. By doing so, they are chosen by people more and more connected, and we understand this way that we decide and we impact collectively the system that does not work when it works as a predator of the environment. So to have this services inside a company when it's not efficient. The challenge, we cannot make all the mistakes or learn all the details. Maybe companies that like we have been seeing here. So we have Mato Grosso. We must start with examples that are contemporary. They can prove it's possible. They must work in a collaborative way, and they make it available, the technology itself, so that we can help collectively more companies to advance, because we don't have another option. We do, but this is the best option, no doubt about it, with the climate changes and the challenges, where it becomes the source of innovation and transition, where you can start aligning with the net zero network and also to accelerate more and more. Thank you, Denise Rios, for your detailed explanation about strategy Natura has had in terms of management. I'd like to ask Fernando that we're talking about this regenerative economy and the big value for the standing forest. So with all the environmental points for the state of Mato Grosso to meet the targets, Andrea, I will be quick because we have run out of time, but getting the profile of the Brazilian emissions in the state of Mato Grosso, unlike developed countries. So our problem is to reduce deforestation, to keep our forests with good practices in agriculture, and base solutions can contribute to this decarbonization in companies, in states, and in our country as a whole. Our challenge today is that many people can see this inside the Amazon rainforest, because low carbon economy is just like a punishment. It's a sentence to poverty. So we must demystify this and prove the opposite, because we can have development, economic and social development. We must add value in these products for the forest. We must organize these chains. And I believe that the turning point is in the precipitation of carbon. Mato Grosso state, and our intention is to have not only to export soya, cotton, and carbon and meat. We want to do that to transform these products, and so that it can be incorporated in the business models of companies. We can see that the carbon market as a turning key point that we must have for this value, added value for the forest, and to promote this economic and social development of low carbon. Thank you, Fernando. And the carbon market is one of the most important topics for CBDS. So, heartbroken, I'm finishing this panel because I have run out of time, but I thank you all for your participation. Denise, Gilberto, Fernando, it was a fruitful discussion with a lot of data, and I close this panel with a sentence that I really like it. Denise, we must leave a legacy, not a footprint. With this reflection, thank you so much for all the audience, and I wish you have a great event. Thank you, Andrea, with this important message. Thank you, all panelists. We have a pause now, a break now, and then we have the last panel talking about ESG, resilient and regenerative business. See you there.